here in China, you can meet the Chinese. Here in China, you can meet the Chinese.
Welcome along to first practice for the 75th Italian. Very, very dark in colour. It's going to raise those temperatures even more. We could be looking at track temperatures of around 60 degrees ultimately. At the moment, it's 49 degrees and the air temperature is 32.3 degrees. And Karun Chandok can testify to that hot air temperature because he's just hot-footed it literally from the paddock to join me here in the commentary box.
It is absolutely roasting. It is, yeah, incredibly hot. And as you say, I think the new surface is going to be really interesting to see throughout the weekend. I did learn a fun fact this morning, Rach.
Okay, go for it.
Which is that although the surface is obviously, as you say, that quite dark surface, the stones, is quite close together, the bitumen across the top. But one of the Mercedes engineers was saying to me, actually, the material they've used is different to what we've seen in other circuits. And therefore, they've been tracking the temperature over the last week. And it's not going as high as expectations. So it's actually caught everyone by surprise because the pictures that we all saw indicated that the temperature is going to go sky high. But actually, they think it's going to be a bit more of a normal temperature range. So that's good for them for tyre blistering and those sort of facts there.
Well, it's going to be good for certain teams as well. We'll get on to that during the session. I managed to go out there yesterday and experience the new track surface, but someone about to do it for the very, very first time is Kimi Antonelli. And you know it's a big deal when Ted Kravitz is loitering outside your garage in the pit lane. Ted Kravitz, good morning, good afternoon, I should say locally. How are you?
Hello, Rachel. Hello, Karun. Welcome, everybody, to the pit lane. I tell you, I've been working in this pit lane for 23 years, and I've seldom seen attention like Kimi Antonelli is getting at the front of this garage. It's thinned out a bit now, but take a look at this shot from just a few minutes ago. It's thinned out for a good reason, because Kimi Antonelli is about to go on track. But Rachel, if we can play these shots in from just a minute ago, it was 3 deep with photographers at the front of the garage, and I haven't seen attention on a driver like this since the Michael Schumacher days. I promise you, it's that much. And when you bear in mind that you've got Ferrari, you've got Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, the stars of Ferrari, you've got Lewis Hamilton in the next garage, for heaven's sake. He's going to be a Ferrari driver next year, and yet it's the Italian star of tomorrow and the man who we all expect to be a Formula One driver for Mercedes next year who's getting all the attention. Star quality, Rachel, star quality and expectation, and that's why he's so popular at the moment.
Well, exactly, Ted. We've just seen Toto Wolff lean in to have a word with him through his helmet, and actually we are expecting an announcement tomorrow as to whether or not he will have that seat permanently, aren't we, for next season. But everyone feels like that is what is coming in the next 24 hours or so on him. We saw a shot of George Russell there. Let's listen to him take it to the track. We're trying to listen there, and can we hear the Tifosi cheering him as he comes out? Maybe not just yet. Well, he's joined that queue then at the end of the pit lane, and they take to the track for this first practice session. And Karun, there's a huge weight of expectation on him, isn't there? Because there's been so much debate and discussion about who's going to be in that second Mercedes seat.
Absolutely, and he's got to be one of the most highly rated drivers to come through the single-seater ladder in a very long time. It's got that sort of Piastri, Leclerc, Verstappen, that sort of feel about his journey through the karting journey and into single-seaters. So, and we know how great those three names that I just mentioned have been. So, yeah, I'm excited to see him in a Mercedes next year up against George Russell. I think Mercedes are doing everything they can to prepare him with simulator days and testing with an old car and things like that. But this session is a big moment for him. You know, on home ground, driving a current Formula One car on track for the first time with 19 other cars in an official F1 season. That's a very big moment for a driver.
How does a team assess a driver in order to put him in an F1 car? We've seen him in F2. We know that the Premier this season perhaps isn't as competitive as it has been in the past. So he and Ollie Behrman not looking, you know, at the front of the grid, let's be honest, in F2 right now. He's had some success, but how do you assess a driver to then put him into an F1 car when they're not winning, leading, fighting for wins in the F2 championship?
I think it's a great question because, you know, as you see it from the graphic on the right-hand side, he's won everything else on the run up to F2. He's currently 7th behind, actually, Colapinto in the championship. So, you know, if you're a casual fan of the sport and you've gone on the F2 table, you're wondering why we're talking about the drivers 6th, 7th and 15th being promoted to F1, Ollie Behrman in 15th. And I think it's because F2 at the moment is a bit strange. They introduced a new car this year. Some teams have got on top of it better than others. It all seems a little bit random in terms of the results. And therefore, we're not seeing these consistent results. So to answer your question of how Mercedes are judging him, it's based on the simulator testing and the testing he's doing with the old car. Because they've got references. They know what that car was capable of when George and Lewis drove at whatever track they were testing at. And they'll have, you know, benchmarks. And also what they've done is they've run Kimi, for example, at Silverstone when they tested him. They had Mick Schumacher there around the same time. They had George Russell flown in to do a little bit.
Well,
so they've created benchmarks for him. And therefore, they'll be able to apply the offset of, look, he drove on day 1, that's a day 3, and work it out.
Talk me through his first time lap, Corinne.
Well, down to the first chicane, the curve's much flatter than we've seen in the past. He's actually gone in there a little bit deep. He's following Carlos Sainz. And, you know, again, this is something he wouldn't have done before, right? He wouldn't have followed other F1 cars, so he wouldn't have experienced the wake and the turbulent air from other cars in front of him, and that affects the braking and the downforce. So up to the second chicane here, gets the nose in, little hint of a lockup actually into that, and using lots of curb on the way out. Turns into the first Lesmo, and then charging up towards Lesmo 2. Looking pretty neat, tidy through that run as we now start to drop downhill. He's actually done very good first sector time.
This is quickest so far.
Yeah, well, comparable
just been beaten. Just been matched, yeah.
Yeah, faster than anybody in middle sector. You can see, just look at the car in front there of Carlos Sainz he's catching. And I have to say, there's a little bit of a benefit for him because he's already done the F2 pre-practice. They had 45 minutes of practice this morning. And when you've got a track that's been fully resurfaced and curbs that have been reprofiled and changed in a lot of places, actually having that little bit of knowledge is going to be helpful. And he goes to the top of the times with his first ever lap in an official session. So that's a good start of his F1 career.
Fantastic. You say better benefit, but also there've got to be some drawbacks to jumping straight from an F2 car into an F1 car. And he's going back in the F2 car again later today.
Yeah, it's more, I think, when you go back. I think when he gets back in the F2 car for qualifying, actually the references change. You know, the F1 car performance is so much better. Let's look at Max. Not the first chicane and
straight on at F1, yeah.
Just choosing to go down the escape road rather than attempt the corner. But, you know, I think the references change so much. You know, you brake later with an F1 car. It's lighter. It's got better downforce, better performance. Leclerc also going straight on. So, you know, Ferrari need to optimize the braking there. This is that strip of gravel we've seen put down at both chicanes. Honestly, I just don't see how it's going to be a deterrent for the drivers. They're just able to fly over it with the cars that they've got, the big tires and the downforce. So it's not really going to be much of a deterrent. So anyway, this is one of the two people, Rachel, that the Tifosi are here to see. Charles Leclerc alongside Carlos Sainz, of course. And Sainz, yellow helmet this weekend and a black helmet for Leclerc. So we've got to get that into our brains, haven't we?
Yes, definitely. They have their black race suits on, don't they? Because they've got their different... And there's more black on the livery, to be fair, as well, on the car this weekend, like they did with Miami. Changed the colour of the race suit and added some notes to the car that was out on track. But Ferrari hoping to go well this weekend here in front of their home fans. Why should they go well? I know they've got a raft of upgrades as well, but why should they go well here? And then we've got Singapore coming up as well, which I know they are looking forward to.
And I think this is where we have to be careful about reading the upgrades. You know, in the past, when people brought loads of parts to Monza, it would be for a Monza-specific low downforce package. With the cost cap and the way the rules work, you can't afford to do that anymore. So whatever they brought here is what they think is going to work for the rest of the season. Max not happy with...
Working turn one, is he?
Well, no, he went down the inside. I think he felt a bit wrong-footed by that car there. You could see his little hand just sort of gesticulating a bit of frustration. So I think he was a little bit annoyed with one of the Haas cars that he felt should have got off the racing line. But anyway, and Mercedes, by the way, I think have just gone out to try and set a bit of a statement with Antonelli on a set of soft tyres straight out the box and put in P1 at the top of the times. We're hopefully going to have Brandy Lord. Yeah, you know, hopefully we'll have Brandy Lord from Mercedes in the pit wall later on. We can ask him, but that makes a nice little headline, isn't it? Straight away to get him at the top of the times.
Very nice, perfect start to the session. And as Oscar is wheeled back into the garage, Ted Kravitz is loitering somewhere nearby down the pit lane. Ted.
Always loitering, Rachel. Just to explain why so many teams, Oscar Piastri with that huge aerodynamic probes, all the probes on there to detect the airflow, get a computerized picture of the airflow coming off those front tyres on the McLaren. Piastri not the only one. Both Aston Martins and Alpine and plenty of teams up and down the pit lane, and that's because Monza with its long straights gives them the perfect opportunity to get a straight line, a picture of the airflow in a straight line. Obviously they do it at other circuits, but Monza's long straights really does give them a different view, a different picture, if you like, of the airflow. The only downside, of course, is that the drivers then have to wait ages for the mechanics to take the aerodynamic rigs and the rakes off, which is currently what's happening with a few drivers up and down the pit lane. But yeah, more aerodynamic testing required, always required, whether it's upgrades for the rest of the season, which is increasingly unlikely, or more, what's the point, 2025 designs.
Ted, I just wanted to ask you, have you had a chance to have a closer look at the Ferrari upgrades yet? Does it look very different?
No, the engine cover's the one that looks the most different. There are some tweaks on the floor which are important, and the diffuser, which are the most important in terms of lap time, Rachel, and pure downforce, and eliminating the bouncing that Ferrari have suffered from over the last few races. But they're the things you can't really see. The big aerodynamic changes, not hugely impactful, if you like. The rear wing, the front wing, you know, the slightly smaller mirror stalks, which Karun was bringing to my attention a little bit earlier. So while it might not look a little hugely different from the outside, Ferrari are certainly hoping the changes to the floor and the diffuser mean that they're in contention for the race win.
Great, thank you very much for the moment, Ted. As Lewis Hamilton goes top of the times, pits Kimi Antonelli by 0.6 of a second. Let's actually hear from Lewis Hamilton and George Russell on who is tipped to be the teammate of George Russell next year in the Mercedes.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see and watch his progress. I saw a picture earlier on of us back in, I think, 2018, and he was one of the grid kids. And I'm like shaking his hand at the front of the grid. So it's obviously reminds you how old you are when you have those experiences. But yeah, looking forward to seeing his growth and his journey through into Formula 1.
You know, he's a great driver. He's done lots of laps in a Formula 1 car. You know, it's his home circuit. So, you know, my advice is just go out, enjoy it. What a dream for him to have his first FP1 in Monza as an Italian driver. So, yeah, just enjoy it.
And right on cue, we rejoin Kimi Antonelli out back on track on the soft.
Oh, he's not enjoying this. Oh, wow, we've joined him just at the point where he lost the back end of the car coming into the Parabolica. He'd gone fastest of anybody in the middle sector. He'd done a personal best sector 1, only a 10th off the best, and then dropped it as he turned into the Parabolica there. The track's gone red. We've got a red flag, of course. Marcus Dudley, who is George Russell's a normal race engineer, straight on the radio, I'm sure, checking, first of all, if Kimi is okay. We see him move in the cockpit, which is good to see. Yeah, there we go, the confirmation. That is not how he would have wanted to have the first 12 minutes of his F1 career go.
Really, really tough for Kimi Antonelli. That's, well, we can definitely see quite a bit of damage to that Mercedes at the moment. Toto, I'm sure, on the radio talking to the rest of the team, because he's already unplugged and is getting out of the car. Good to see that he's okay. So what was behind that? So we watched it happen live.
Well, we cut to it as he turned in and the rear snapped out of line. George Russell, his first concern will be, can they fix that car for FP2? Because selfishly, as a racing driver, he's given up this session, of course, so he's not got this mileage, but he doesn't want to lose any time and be compromised for FP2. And I think there's a couple of things going on, right? One is obviously Antonelli. This was a session for him as a driver. But B, Mercedes were doing back-to-back work with the floor. Anyway, let's look at the replay here. Turns in, gets the apex, and then just gets a snap mid-corner. So it was a bit strange. It went into the apex. It looked pretty sad. Let's look at the on-board. Then here we go, starts to turn in, and then just gets a massive snap of oversteer at the apex there. And I wonder if you got a gust of wind or something like that, because just looking at the direction that the wind is, it's not super windy out there.
No.
But as he turned in, like the car initially looked quite settled.
It looks like it was going.
It went into the apex quite settled. It didn't look like he had any instability on the way in, but then
you see the rear.
Just lost the grip and it snapped out of line mid-corner. So, yeah.
You okay? Are you okay?
Yeah. Sorry.
Kimi, all good. All good, Kimi.
This is exactly it, isn't it, Karun? Because, you know, this is his first run. He knows the pressure that was on him. He will have been trying his best. And to have that happen, how do you psychologically, I mean, Toto, straight on, all good, all good. Psychologically, how do you pull yourself out of that? And
it's tough, you know. I mean, I've had a shunt as a third driver, reserve driver, you know, and he's, you know, you feel the pain, you feel the embarrassment, you feel you've let the team down, and it's he's going to go to the medical center because it was quite a hefty impact, you have to say. You know, when you're coming into Parabolica, the cars are doing over 300 kilometers an hour. When you enter the corner, you would have scrubbed off a bit of speed on the way in. It's nice to see him walking unaided there, so it's a pretty good sign that he's okay. But it triggers a sensor in terms of the G load of the impact, and that automatically means he has to go to the medical center for a check. So it looks like he's okay. He said he was okay, so that's nice. But yeah, I think psychologically that'll be a bit of a kick. You know, I think he's going to have a couple more goals, probably Mexico, Abu Dhabi. But there's not many races left where we haven't got a sprint, or you know, it's not a street track. So yeah, it's a tough one for him.
Ted.
Wow, a tough one indeed. And yeah, drama, Rachel, with all the expectation. The photographers returned to the front of the Mercedes garage to get a picture of a reaction from Toto Wolff or George Russell or whatever. All the mechanics looking at the car, sort of shaping up from the World Feed pictures as much as they can, the job that they'll have to do in the next 2.5, 3 hours once they get the car back, to get that car ready for George Russell to go and see what he can do in free practice too. And for the engineers, trying to work out exactly what it was, whether it was a gust of wind or something on the car, or just Kimi Antonelli losing it by himself, maybe taking a bit too much speed into that corner. But that's for them to look at the data later and have a look. That's the medical, the siren you could hear in the background was the medical car just passing by. So everyone knows that Kimi is okay. And I thought that was a timely and interesting interjection from Toto Wolff on the radio. And it goes back to essentially, I suppose, Rachel, what Lewis Hamilton was saying. That was kind of a warning of expectations, wasn't it? Maybe we're as guilty as this as anybody else. But when Lewis said in those quotes we heard, look, we've got to remember, he's just turned 18.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is the age where kids are leaving school, maybe contemplating university, maybe going for a driving test or driving lessons. So young. And there is, when you've got 3 deep photographers outside, everybody looking at you, well, it's all part of the package, isn't it? But yeah. Sorry,
it is. I mean, well, I was going to say, if you follow him on social media, you would have seen the posts he put up last weekend of his birthday, and it just takes me back to being that age and celebrating my friends. I couldn't imagine being in his shoes right now with all that pressure and with the world's media training its camera lenses on you as you take your first run.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so we've had 20 minutes, 15 minutes of running. Kimi Antonelli has gone to the medical centre. That is his car, his Mercedes, at the side of the track. George will get in it later if they can get it fixed. Right now, teammate Lewis Hamilton tops the times. So as we await the return of that Mercedes, the fans in the crowd, 32.7 degrees now, the temperature. Ferrari shirt holding up a Go Kimi sign in the crowd here. Kimi Antonelli, of course, I mean, this is the car coming back. I know you can't possibly assess the damage and tell me, but they should be able to get that fixed for FP2, would you think? It was side impact. That's the only worry with that is, I mean, it's a Friday gearbox anyway, isn't it? But
yeah, I think it should be fine. The gap between FP1 and FP2 is a reasonable. I mean, he's definitely done damage to the rear corner. You can see the wheel is skew there. The floor looks damaged. Bodywork, I'm sure, as well. So and there's the front wing lying on the gravel, which is obviously an easy fix. So yeah, it's suboptimal, definitely. So let's again look from overhead. Turned in okay. And then just mid-corner lost the rear end, and just didn't have the grip. And
at what point do you know that in the car?
I think, well, when it's spinning, well, you'll feel the rear. You'll start to feel the rear come around on you. Obviously, like there, he turns in, it's fine, and then there he'll get a cue in the back of the car. But it went pretty quickly. It didn't look like he had much warning. I think we have to bear in mind, right? This is also, I believe, what would have been like his second or third ever timed lap in this car.
Okay, so that's Kimi off at turn 11.
Is he okay?
Stand by. Yes, I think he's okay. Yep, driver okay.
Lewis just checking in, but yeah, I think it's it's only his second or third time lap, isn't he? Because he's been driving. I know George said he's done lots of laps in F1 car. He's not done it in this car, and that's the thing is, as an 18-year-old, he's out there to impress, home crowd. We've all talked about the expectations. Ted was talking about the cameras being 3D, all this sort of stuff. You've got to try and block that out. And just remember, actually, from a pure driving sense, when you get into any new car, you've got to dial yourself in. You've got to understand where the limit of the grip is. You've got to understand at what point will you get that snap of oversteer. Where can, driving a race car, you're on this precipice of grip. And you've got to understand, and each car is different. All of these 10 cars on the grid are different. And you've got to understand where that precipice is and try and sort of lean on there with one leg hanging off the cliff. And it takes time to understand that. And it feels like, he just clearly, mid-corner there, fell off that cliff.
What are the differences in level of grip between F2 and an F1 car? So he would have been driving earlier.
Huge, yeah, it's massive. And it's also the weight, it's the electronics, these cars. There's so many more toys at your disposal in terms of the electronic diff, in terms of the engine braking settings, in terms of the brake-by-wire systems, but most importantly, aero sensitivity. It's completely different in an F1 car.
This is the other rookie in the session at the moment, Franco Colapinto, who's now in the Williams for the rest of this season. 9 races in this Williams car, replacing Logan Sargent. This is the story of Kimi Antonelli's day, number 12 on the George Russell Mercedes, while George sits out this FP1 session, and Kimi's seat goes in. Had the seat fitting here this weekend, in fact. Few last-minute words on the radio, and this was the scene at the front of the garage. The photographer's 3 deep while he got ready for his laps. Toto will popping his head in to have a few final words with him before he went out on track. First time run was pretty neat, actually, and put him to the top of the boards at the time. And that was what happened on his second timed lap. We're looking at a resumption of our session in 3 minutes' time, but Lewis Hamilton checking in on him. That's the front wing you can see coming back now from Kimi Antonelli's car. It's been returned to the pit lane, so the team will be able to start working on it straight away, Corinne. But yes, we've got 3 more minutes before the cars are allowed back on track, and they've repaired all the barriers. But some work to be done at Mercedes, who didn't have the weekend quite that they wanted last time out, and are looking for a few answers right now.
Yeah, I think you'd have to say of the top 4 teams, they had the most disappointing weekend, didn't they? In Zandvoort finishing 7th and 8th. Off the back of winning 2 of the previous 3 races, I should say. So yeah, I think this is of course a very different track, right? This is an outlier in the calendar now in terms of the straight line speed and low downforce level, and the Franco Colapinto fans are here. The first Argentine driver in 23 years since Gaston Mazzacane. So yeah, and we were just chatting with James Vowles this morning, who was saying that the response in not just Argentina but all of South America has been amazing. The Williams team have said they've been inundated with messages and support from so many fans and sponsors and people like that from South America. So I think there's a lot of excitement about Colapinto's arrival here.
He's only got 9 races though with the team, because that's all he's got. I mean, there isn't a seat there next year, so what can he do with these 9 races?
Just do the best job he can, and what he wants to do is establish that as a credible, respectable Formula One option for the future.
All right, well, I'm very pleased to say actually we can be joined by Bradley Lord of Mercedes now, who is down in the garage at the moment. And Bradley, so sorry to see that with Kimi Antonelli. Firstly, we hear he's okay. Just what is the team's assessment right now?
We're literally just getting the car back as we speak, actually, Rachel, so we'll be able to take a look. Obviously, there's pretty hefty impact at high-speed corner, so Kimi's still down at the medical centre just being checked out, making sure everything's okay, and then we'll assess the car and hopefully have a turnaround for FP2.
Bradley, we heard Toto come on the radio straight away to give Kimi a little bit of reassurance. Just want to ask about the conversations going into the session. Was it what was going to be his plan? Obviously not how it ended, but was it just dial yourself in? What was the advice that the team gave him before the session?
Yeah, I think it was. He was running. We're running a floor comparison, just still evaluating the update that we brought to Spa. So he had one on, Lewis has the other on the other car. 2 sets of soft tyres, and really just head on out and enjoy yourself and enjoy the experience. That was the only real advice he was given. So yeah, it's unfortunate it ended the way it did, but he was sort of on the limit, pushing the limit from lap 1. And that's always good to see, and it's all part of the learning curve.
How do you prepare someone, 18 years old? I know we've said his age a few times. I know Max came in younger, but how do you prepare an 18-year-old for a team like Mercedes and for a weekend like this, and possibly, as everyone's speculating, a future with the team? How do you prepare someone like that? What does Mercedes do?
Yeah, it's been lots of work back at the factory with the engineers in the sim, understanding the switch changes, how the car works, and everything he needs to do from the driving point of view. And then obviously we've done thousands of kilometres already this season in a 2022 car in the TPC program, we call it, testing of a previous car. So that's also been a big part of his preparation so far.
And Bradley, how does the team, I see Toto in the background behind you there, how do you guys put an arm around his shoulder? Because between now and I think it's Mexico,
Did you find someone you know there?
That's a few more days.
there was a kid
it's a long
waiting.
time for this to be sitting in his brain.
That's good.
How are you going to put an arm around shoulder and hope this doesn't hurt him psychologically?
I think it's exactly that, Karun. I mean, it's a high support environment that we need to give him, and he'll be having exactly that. It changes nothing. It's all part of the learning curve for a young driver, and the biggest challenge now will be to get him back and focused for FT qualifying this afternoon and able to deliver his maximum there.
Appreciate you coming on, Bradley. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you more across the weekend, and we do actually have a team embedded with Mercedes this weekend, filming behind the scenes, which you'll be able to see in Baku. So it will be a fascinating watch when we get to it. That is at the next race. This race, we're back on track in this session now. Everybody getting out to try and get some running in on this circuit, and we've talked about that resurfaced track, Karun, and at the moment track temperature is only at 50.8, so it'll be a relief. Which teams would have been worried about it potentially reaching 60 degrees? Because there's been a lot of speculation this week about who that might hurt.
I think it's just a hard one to answer. Yeah, historically, so I saw some stories about Mercedes struggling with higher track temps, maybe. I just think Monza is so unusual as a track layout. You don't have the straight line speed, you know, in terms of in multiple places like you have here, like in Baku or in Mexico. We see amazing straight line speed, but at one part of the track here, because it's all the way around, and you run such low downforce, because of that, the car works in a different way. It runs in a different part of what we call the aero map, so the way the car produces the downforce is different. It is just an outlier, so I think it's a bit simplistic to say, oh, if the track temperature is this number, so-and-so is going to suffer. I think that's just it's a bit too simplistic in the complex world of Formula One tyres.
And George was certainly not talking down their chances when I spoke to him yesterday. He didn't seem too concerned. We're watching Max Verstappen now as he goes across the line and goes top of the times of the 1:23.088. He actually has the floor on now that Sergio had last weekend, and I wanted to ask you, Corinne, about that. They ran different floors during the race last weekend, which is a huge thing for a team to do. Perhaps suggests they don't know quite which direction they're going in. Max said they were running it because he thought we might as well to try and get some answers and some data. And in the past, you would have had Adrian Newey there looking over it going, well, this is what we need to do, this is the direction we need to go. And he's not there right now. He's moved aside from that role. Is that affecting them?
They will obviously say no. My personal opinion is the value of someone like Adrian in a big team environment like today isn't necessarily about him drawing the bits like he used to through the 90s. It's about offering that holistic view of direction. And I think what perhaps people sometimes underestimate is how much Adrian can contribute in terms of the running of the car and unlocking the performance of a package. Now, he was a race engineer. His background is race engineering, Mario Andretti and Damon Hill to the championship, things like that. So he's been in the coalface of race engineering and unlocking performance of an existing package, as well as obviously being a brilliant designer, arguably the greatest of all time. So I think they will miss his contributions. I do think, you know, having that big picture view of not quite sure this is working, why don't we look into this? I don't know the clear detail of it, but I think we should look into this direction. I feel like someone like Adrian can offer a lot just with his experience and knowledge.
And you often saw him sitting on the pit wall and there'd be a photo in his hands, wouldn't there, of something he'd seen, and he'd be studying it during sessions, during whatever, and trying to turn things around. So,
well, yeah, he would get involved in strategy conversations just because, again, he was interested in it, he had experience of it, he enjoyed doing it because, you know what, he is one of the most competitive human beings on the planet and doesn't like losing. And that comes back to the point, he would be the one looking to unlock every bit of performance, perhaps in places that other people are not, because they haven't necessarily got his experience or knowledge.
Whichever team he ends up at, if he ends up at a team, we'll be very lucky to have him. Maybe an announcement on that in the next few weeks too. This is Oscar Piastri though, and McLaren certainly on a rich vein of form at the moment. We did see Franco Colapinto earlier. Now he's in the car for Williams this weekend. As we just see a little replay of Lewis right now. What's happened to Lewis?
Lewis running wide onto the gravel there, and yeah, just had a hint of oversteer from mid-corner, no massive issue. Now this is the interesting thing. So these curbs, right, have been completely changed, and he's, you know, so the drivers like Lewis. It's quite hard to tell from here. I'll do it on the SkyPad, shall I?
Okay, yeah.
We'll get that replay into the SkyPad, and I'll mark it up after the session. That's an easier way to show it.
Yeah, because you trying to show me with your hands in here isn't going to work, is it?
Not for everybody at home, no. I can show you, but I don't think it helps
not going to help
all the people at home. So, yeah, but my point being, they're all experimenting with the curves. They're all experimenting with how to attack the curves, how much to attack the curves, how the car lands when it comes off the curve, and what trajectory it's on. That's really important as well. So, yeah, I think this is very much this voyage of discovery that the drivers are on, and something that George Russell will be missing, because I tell you what, it's not something you learn in a single lap. when you play with the curbs here, you do need to spend a bit of time playing with it.
Well, funnily enough, when I went out with Alex Albon yesterday to do the hot laps, he said, I never normally do this, but I'm doing it this weekend because I want to see the track. I want to go over those curbs and I want to experiment, which was great fun for me, as you'll see. However, they are all trying to find out, and we actually spoke to some of them about the track changes yesterday. Let's hear from the drivers on their thoughts.
It's a new, completely circuit, all resurfaced, new curbs, new challenges. It's going to be the first time that we probably go this fast around Monza, so it's going to be exciting.
It'll change quite a lot in terms of I'm sure especially with these temperatures, the grip will be quite high. And because it's still fairly new, I think the grip will evolve through the weekends and there'll be probably a big track evolution. So I think that'll be fun. They change the curbs as well. Right now, I can't say I love them. It takes a little bit of the old kind of feeling of Monza away in some places.
The curves have changed, the grip has changed. I did my sim session beforehand, and he was
nearly lost it. It's fixed.
All great. So,
yeah, we saw.
It's going to be interesting to see.
Very tricky
and also
to drive.
To see if it changes the approach as well. With the downforce, it might push you to go for less now that there's a little bit more grip. So I think it will be interesting also to see what it does with the tires.
Maybe lost a bit of its character. I feel like some of the curbs they've put in are a little bit more generic, and I think generally Monza had quite a specific style of track. It was quite bumpy, but that's not a bad thing, and the curbs were quite unique, so let's see how it goes. I think there's going to be a lot of exploring in FP1 and FP2. I think with these curves, if you can use them or not and how much you can use them will be a big question mark. Yeah, let's see.
That press conference just minutes before we took to the track, and he found out whether he could go over the curbs or not, at least in a road car. We saw Charles Leclerc there on team radio, turn 6, nearly lost it at turn 6. This car was very tricky to drive, he was saying. That's with the raft of upgrades as well that they've got on that Ferrari this weekend.
Yeah, I think I was just listening to the driver's comments there, and I have to say I agree. It was quite nice coming to different tracks which had different curves, and over time we've sort of got this, sanitization of racetracks happening where the curves are all getting standardized and, flatter and a bit easier, taking away some of the challenge. And I think, there was nothing wrong with having bumps and high curves. So I could see why they're a little bit disappointed with how Monza's changed that way.
Right, watching Valtteri Bottas on track as he goes quickest overall. Ted, what have you got for us?
Quickest overall. Valtteri Bottas in a Sauber.
When was the last time we said that?
Are they making a bit of a statement here as they look to really, talk about bounce back ability, Rachel, not that you were, but it is a word. And after suffering what, by their own admission, was their poorest in terms of performance race of the season, and for some time in Zandvoort, Sauber are really looking to completely flip it and have the chance to even score a point, which they haven't managed to as a team here in Monza. So lots of work going on, maybe a little bit of fuel coming out of the car for those times that you're seeing, but certainly they are determined. And Valtteri Bottas saying yesterday that Mattia Binotto, the newly appointed sort of CEO and Chief Technical Officer of the Sauber team, as they head towards being Audi in about a year and a half, is going to be here this weekend. He's not in the garage, I can tell you that. Whether he is in the back of the garage and just watching the monitors, I don't know. He's not on the pit wall, so don't expect to see Mattia Binotto. Of course, the ex-Ferrari team boss, him, the Harry Potter guy, with the glasses. Don't expect to see him on the pit wall gantry. He is going to be here this weekend, seeing what kind of team they are and that he's taking over from. But they've started well so far.
They have indeed, and Jaguar, you also went P7 while you were talking to us as well then, Ted. Thank you very much. Now we're riding on board with Charles Leclerc at the moment. If you want to ride on board with any of the 20 drivers on this year's grid, you can do so. You can watch every session this season from your favourite driver's perspective. You can listen in on their team radio as well. To get started, you just need to download the Sky Sports app to your phone or tablet, or you can use that QR code that's on your screen right now. When you're there, log in with your Sky ID, head to the Sky Sports F1 channel and choose your favourite driver. Sky Glass, Sky Q and Sky Stream customers can also access this via the interactive button on your remote control, and this is also available to Now customers. So get on on board with the drivers, on boards even, if that's even a phrase, correct, as we see the Ferrari wheeled back into the garage right now. And yes, they were surprised by their performance in Zandvoort, weren't they, a little bit?
Yeah, I think, especially on the Sunday,
yeah, race day performance.
Yeah, both drivers came through the pack well, and you know, I think, yeah, it was a real surprise podium. Leclerc said he was expected to be 7th and ended up 3rd, so yeah, great result for him.
Well, the last Grand Prix winner, Lando Norris, take us through this lap with him, Karun. How's the McLaren performing here?
Well, coming through the Curva Grande, comfortably flat. It's basically a straight in a modern car, even wet, I think, nowadays. So 3 tenths down, he's on the medium tyre, of course, so this isn't you know, a lap where he's chasing peak performance. This is all about just getting himself and the car dialed into the track and the conditions through the first Lesmo. It looks heavy to me, the car as well, so perhaps doing a little bit of race prep here. DRS open, so maybe not doing race prep, but just some balance work on the medium tyre. Coming up to the Ascari chicane, this, honestly, Rach, this is one of my favorite sections of the racetrack anywhere on the planet, the Ascari chicane. I think that challenge of firing it into the left curve and then just hugging the right-hand side before you launch it out off the last left kink is just such a rewarding experience. And then you charge up to Parabolica, just got to pick the point where the rear of the car settles and you can get on the power nicely. He's not been using all of the width there, so clearly this is a lap where, you know, he's not worrying about troubling the top of the timesheets. It's very much about preparation for Sunday.
When I spoke to Lando after the race, he said he's been in this title hunt since the first race of the season. He's catching Max now, closed the gap just a little bit last weekend in the points. Do you see this as a battle between them? Can Ferrari get back into it? Can Charles get back into this fight for the driver's title?
The driver's title?
Yes.
No, I think
it's
really
between those two.
I think the driver's title is Max's championship to lose. You know, he's got a 70-point buffer with 9 races to go, including the one on Sunday. You know, it's going to take a couple of non-finishes for Max to get Lando truly into the fight. I think that the constructors' battle is well and truly on, and if anything, it's a McLaren the favourites. But I think he's still an outside bet for the driver's title, unless Verstappen has a couple of non-finishes. Because if Verstappen gets, you know, 2 DNFs and Lando wins those, all of a sudden we're looking then at a under 30-point battle, right, for the title. So then it's game on.
Right, Franco Colapinto is out on track this first race weekend as Williams driver. Now, Karun, talk us through the rest of this for him.
So he's on a set of soft tyres up to the second Lesmo there, and his first sector not particularly special on this lap. I think the tyres, he's not on a fresh set at the moment, so they've done a little bit of mileage. And this, you know, Williams are just trying to give him that mileage. And to be honest, he's being very sensible, isn't he? He's not. We saw him have a little bit of an oversteer moment, drop a wheel in the gravel earlier, but otherwise he's just dialing himself in. You know, if you look at the overall times, 22.2 for Albon, 22.8, 6 tenths off. You know, that doesn't matter so much as long as he's kept it on the island and is learning, which is, unfortunately for Antonelli, not what he did. So, yeah, Colapinto, it's just, he looks sensible. He looks like he's just going through his program, being sensible about it. And maybe that is the difference, Rachel, between knowing you've got 3 sessions to dial yourself in versus Antonelli, who knew he had 1 hour to make an impression.
Yeah, okay, well, he's got a big challenge ahead of him. Let's hear what the other drivers have had to say about the position Franco Colapinto's found himself in.
The more difficult part of coming in mid-season is just we're on top of everything. You know, we know how the tyres work, how everything works, and we're able to predict everything. For him, it's the complete opposite almost. You know, he's going to go into certain times in qualifying and races just not being able to preempt what's going to happen with the tyres when they get to this temperature, what's going to happen, how then do you have to drive. You know, we're prepared for everything and every step of the way, and for him that's going to be the tough part, but he's here for a reason, because he's talented and he's a very good kid.
He knows the seat's not up for grabs next year. There's no pressure in terms of having to deliver, and we're not trying to get a seat for next year, so in some ways I think it's more just a bit of experience. I don't know what Franco's going to do next year, but the things you learn in F1 can help you a lot into, let's say, if he does another year in Formula 2 next year.
Yeah, I think it will be challenging, but also I think it will be a perfect experience for him. I think all the kids are dreaming to be in this paddock. Also, in the same time, you feel for Logan in the same time. And yeah, for me, I think to be in a Williams is a perfect track to be racing out here in Monza. So I'm sure he will love every second of it.
The most talented drivers and stuff, they should always end up in Formula 1, I think. And luckily, yeah, there is a new wave again that are now entering Formula 1, and that's great to see. Of course, I'm in my 10th year of Formula 1 already, so I do feel a little bit older now that you see the 17 and 18-year-olds knocking on the door. I think that's normal. But it's good for Formula 1.
Also, Williams are great at educating and teaching the drivers how to get the most out of it. So also, I think I'll try and help him as much as I can as well.
Michel Leclerc's just gone second quickest on the timesheets, but we saw Carlos Sainz going well there, Karun, until he went wide.
Yeah, but managed to bail out of it at the Parabolica and save it. So he was 3/10 up actually on Leclerc's time, the first two sectors. Here's it riding on board on the front wing. Turns in there, gets that mid-corner snap that we saw Antonelli. In fact, he ran over Antonelli's tyre track. But Sainz managing to just slow the car down and just use the runoff area to get himself out of jail.
Tricky one.
Indeed, tricky one. So they'll come back in then in the Ferraris, but it was quick at the moment, at the time before that happened for Carlos Sainz. His teammate, though, has put himself in P2. Still Valtteri Bottas, top of the time so far, though, with a 1:22.1 on the soft tyre. As we see Max Verstappen sat in the Red Bull garage, P12 so far on the soft tyres, 8/10 off that lap from Valtteri Bottas. We always caveat the sessions with we don't know how much fuel they're running, but I mean that is a hugely mixed up top 10 there.
I mean, if we had that on the grid report for the race, that'd be
over the moon.
That'd be great fun. So Colapinto starting 11th.
We've just celebrated the mix-up of teams up there.
Yeah, and I think Alex Albon, I was just about to say, I think this new surface is playing a big part here because it will just evolve and improve and grip up. Look at, even there, look at the groove. Look at how clean it is on the racing line versus off the line. And that's what we're just going to see all through the weekend till we get to the Grand Prix.
So track evolution is massive, or going to be massive. We know already that teams try and do the toe here in qualifying. It's getting out last with your teammate at the end of Q3 going to be the answer. Is that what they're all going to try and aim for? Because we've heard in the past some teams say there's no point trying to do the toe because if it doesn't work, you ruin it.
Well, or they make a mess of it. Remember, was it 2019, 2022 as well? We've seen
shambles the session.
Yeah. The problem is the toe. If you luck into it, it's hard to overstate. But let's say you get a good toe of somebody, it can be worth 4 or 5 tenths. Now, that could really be the difference between the front row and being 7th, 8th with how close F1 is now. So that's why they're all going to still chase the toe. I'm intrigued to see how they play it. I think it's going to be one of the stories for us to watch in qualifying and look at afterwards. Is just who played the slipstream game right.
Well, I mean, and here we are on board with Nico Hülkenberg, who actually gave Max Verstappen a toe a couple of times in qualifying sessions purely by accident. As you say, Max lucked into it.
Similar moment there, just to the apex of Parabolica. And exactly the same point that we saw Antonelli losing. I think that is actually one of the differences. You know, we heard Lando talking about it earlier. You know, these drivers have been in the dialed in, they've been in these cars all season long. And they are able to get that cue of when the car's stepping out of line and back out of it and brake and slow down and save it.
But it's different with Antonelli.
Yeah, he's still, you know, it was his 3rd proper time lap in this car. Didn't know where the limit was. The argument will be, you know, in that situation, should he have been near that limit anyway when there's nothing really to gain? And that's what he'll be beating himself up about it. He knows this. He's a smart kid. He doesn't need anyone to tell him that. He'll be beating himself up about being that close to the limit that early on.
And also maybe carrying some confidence from being around the track in F2 already and thinking he could push a little bit more, a little bit earlier in the session?
I don't think so. I think it's very much just about wanting to make an impression. And unfortunately for him, he ended up not making the wrong one at the end of that session. But listen, he's a talented driver. He'll live to fight another day.
And he's done it on a race weekend where he's just doing the FP1 session.
How bad is the deceleration? Because it feels particularly bad.
It's poor.
I was saying as opposed to a race weekend, which may be his future, as we see Charles Leclerc complaining on the radio. More or less, Korean, half the grid have put times on medium tyres and half the grid on soft tyres so far. The McLarens on the mediums so far. Lando Norris has just gone out. We'll have a look and see what he's on now. But I do believe, actually, yes, he has put a new set of softs on, so we'll get an idea of the McLaren's pace. A little bit better idea now, I think.
Yeah, Sainz as well going for another lap. As I say, he was fastest of anybody in the first two sectors and well on his way to be quickest, but didn't finish the lap. The pole man, of course, last year, right, wasn't he? He was,
yes.
He definitely knows his way around this place.
A little bit of traffic for him as he goes past Daniel Ricciardo, was that?
Yeah, I thought Ricciardo got out of the way. He's bailed out of it, Sainz, so maybe didn't feel like he got a good run through the chicane. As we saw the sector time nearly 2 tenths down. He's really backed off. Maybe he wants to bring the tyre temperatures down. Well, I wonder if he's trying to bring the tyre temperatures down just to cool them down before he goes again.
Well, Lando's going around the last corner. He's about to start his lap. We'll see what they have on the soft tyres. Plenty of cars out on track at the moment. But as you say, it's the qualifying session you don't want to miss this year because of everything that goes on and with the possibilities of a tow. They're looking at Alpine, Pierre Gasly, who had a great weekend in Zandvoort.
Yeah,
actually.
Very strong drive. I thought there's some front wing adjustments going on down Alpine there for him. Ted, what have you got?
Just got a bit of an update from the Williams garage on Franco Colapinto. He's just gone out on the medium tyres and he's been practicing pit stops. Of course, he's been used to making pit stops in his junior career, but none in a Formula One car with many more people in the pit box. And yeah, I think he's going to take it steady. He won't be slow, but he'll take it steady as he's been practicing them throughout the session. Just a couple of bits of facts otherwise. He's taken number 43. That's because he used to use the number 43 in his karting days, I understand, Rachel. So that's why he's chosen that number. Up until the point he crashed, Kimi Antonelli, by the way, was using car number 12, the number 12. We don't know whether that would be his chosen number, for those of you who like these kind of things, into a potential seat next year, but we will see. And yeah, nice to have an Argentine driver, seeing the Argentine flag just above Franco's name in the Williams garage. Of course, Williams run Argentine drivers in the past. Carlos Reutemann, of course, one of the many great drivers we had from Argentina. Of course, Juan Manuel Fangio, amongst them.
Yes,
5-time
indeed. Yes, thank you, Ted. Charles Leclerc's just gone fastest. Lando Norris going second quickest, just 1/100th behind him. And Oscar Piastri put himself in P4 as well.
Yeah, one of the things Colapinto, the pit stops, Rach, is that it happens an awful lot faster in F1. You know, in F2, they have a limit on the number of people. They're only allowed 6 people for a Formula 2 pit stop, whereas for a Formula 1 pit stop, they're not limited by that. So it happens, you know, the F2 pit stops are sort of 6-7 seconds. And it sounds like quite a small thing, but actually, when you come into the pit box, you've got to make sure you've got the launch map ready to get the car going again. So the engine map, you've got to have the clutch pulled in, you've got to be in the right gear, you know, you've got to go through the systems for launching the car or the pit box. You've only got 2 seconds to do it, which you don't have an issue in F2. They don't have these options of maps and things like that. So, yeah, there's a lot of procedural stuff that he's going to have to learn in the cockpit.
I was literally about to ask you that, and you've covered it all off very neatly as Sergio Perez comes across the line, and what has he been able to do? A 1:22.3 on the soft tyres, so 4/10 off the fastest lap from Charles Leclerc so far. And Kimi Antonelli is back from the medical centre. He's been heading up from the medical centre. Here he is, walking back now. Thankfully, all okay, and I'm sure we're just going to go and talk to the team and just ask what happened, I guess, and what they can say to him about that moment. I mean, he would desperately want to get back out there now straight away, but unfortunately that car needs repairing, so that's the end of the session.
Yeah, I think that'll weigh on his mind until Mexico, you know, and the next time, maybe not until Mexico, but certainly, you know, it'll weigh on his mind for a little while. When he gets back in the car in Mexico, it will be hovering, because there's going to be lots of people asking the questions, and you know, if he gets announced as a Grand Prix driver, this is going to come up, isn't it? You know, it's just the way the sport is nowadays, and social media and all the rest of it. So I do feel for him, you know, as Lewis was saying, he's only 18 years old, and you've got to cut him some slack at that age. It's a pretty harsh introduction to F1 for him, unfortunately.
Gets back in the F2 car, of course, this afternoon for F2 qualifying.
Yeah, he's got to somehow put this behind him. And actually,
he will doing that, won't he?
You know what? Actually, that is the best way to get past things. And Mercedes will, I'm sure, try and get him back out in one of the older F1 cars. Give him some mileage. Just get him back on track. Rebuild his confidence. That's the best thing they can do. Is just put him back in the race car without the pressure of race weekend, and just rebuild his confidence again. Fernando Alonso's going well here.
He is two-time Italian Grand Prix winner.
Yeah, I mean,
they've got a couple of upgrades on the Aston this weekend, but they've been hovering around in the middle. They kind of ended up in a fight with Alpine, didn't they, for a bit as well?
Yeah, and ended up behind Alpine in Zandvoort, which, you know, at the start of the season, if you look where Aston were, where Zandvoort and Alpine were, you'd never put money on that.
Right, Ted, what have you got?
Down at Mercedes, just to let you know what's happening down there. Kimi Antonelli, as you say, has made his way back from the medical centre, where he's been given all the all clear, back into the garage. And well, we heard Bradley Lord from the team saying that they're going to put their arm around him. Literally, that's just what Toto's been doing. For about 10 seconds, Toto he's still sat down. Kimi is standing up. Toto put his arm around Kimi Antonelli's waist and you know, said, look, don't worry, son, it doesn't affect anything. We told you to go out there and have fun, and these things happen, so don't worry about it. Lots of attention in there. The Drive to Survive cameras are in there, of course they are, as well as our own, so we'll see the results of that at the next race. And the car continues to be worked on, and actually from the little bits of vision that I can grab, it looks like the progress is quite good. So there is a barrier up, but we can just sneak a little peek on George Russell's side, or Kimi Antonelli's side of the garage, and it's key that the mechanics actually managed to get the car back. So thank you very much, grazie to the Italian marshals, who managed to deliver it slightly unusually during a session into the pit lane, during a live session, back to the garage. It's given them half an hour, and I would suspect that will make the difference that will allow George Russell to start free practice 2 on time. Just a hunch, but I'll go with that, Rachel. I'll say that they'll have that car finished by the beginning of FP2.
Great stuff, thank you very much, Ted. I'm sure they'll be telling Kimi to just roll with it. That's the only Oasis reference you're going to get during this session, because there'll be lots more of those this weekend. But Max Verstappen is about to cross the line, having gone quickest in the middle sector, Karim.
Yeah.
He goes quickest overall.
Yeah, one thing that just popped in my head is watching that Red Bull come through the Ascari chicane. I think these modifications to the circuit, where the curbs have been lowered generally across the board, and therefore the cars are able to just run over them much more easily, I think it's going to benefit Red Bull. They were struggling, and they publicly were saying their car wasn't great over bumps and curbs earlier this season. Remember, Verstappen went back to test with an old car at Imola earlier this year as well, to try and get on top of those issues. And having these flatter curbs is going to be of a benefit for Verstappen here.
He kept talking about the turn-in, didn't he? Kept talking about the turn-in in Zandvoort. What's he fighting in that car?
No, but I'm talking about curb strikes.
Yes, no, I know, but in terms of the problems they were having in Zandvoort.
They had lots of understeer in Zandvoort, didn't they? Just every time you looked on board, he just had no front end, and even in the race, you could see it. Like turns 10, 11, it just, you know, had so much understeer in the car. He just couldn't get the performance he wanted, and it was clear that the McLaren was in a much better window. And really, you know, you have to say that if Oscar didn't get stuck maybe in the first stint behind George, then he also could have and probably would have challenged Max a bit more.
Positive signs for Ferrari there, seeing those times on the straights for them this weekend, hoping to go well in front of their home crowd. The Tifosi are fantastically vocal, aren't they, when we come here? I mean, it is quite a sight to behold. And as we see them out on track, as well as this is Oscar Piastri on the start-finish straight. We're speaking to Andrea Stella after the session as well, so find out their thoughts at the end of this session, also ahead of the weekend.
You've got to say they're coming into this as the favourites, aren't they?
Yes.
You know, in recent form, both drivers driving well, the car performing well, the team, you know, as a collective, Zandvoort would have given them so much confidence to dominate a race like that. You know, they've won races before, but that was utterly dominant in Zandvoort, and yeah, they've got to be the favourites this weekend.
Oscar's the top scorer in the last 5 Grand Prix with 92 points. He's got 8 more than Lewis and 16 more than Verstappen.
Yeah.
And yet he hasn't. It's been Lando winning a couple of races.
The last 5
the
would
last
cover
5,
Budapest,
to be
wouldn't
fair.
it?
Yes, it would cover Budapest.
Yeah.
It would cover his win in Budapest. But yeah, top scorer in the last 5. It's good. It's good turnaround for McLaren. It's a. I mean, as you say, that constructors looks like it is going to be very, very close between the two, and McLaren closing that gap all the time now.
And I think that what you just said about Oscar is a huge part of that, right? Like he's been outscoring Perez. You know, it's one thing about Lando versus Max, but for the constructors, because both cars score, of course, it's Oscar versus Perez where the differences come.
And Sergio's saying this weekend, Max copes with the car with his talent more than I can. I mean, that's how Max is getting the points that Perez isn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good executive summary, isn't it, of their time together. And I thought that in Zandvoort, though, Perez did a much more solid job than we've seen in recent races. You know, he's in qualifying, he was, what, 3 tenths away from Max, which is closer than he's been for a while.
That top 6 finish was the first time since Miami, though.
Yeah.
That's quite a long time.
That's what I'm saying. So,
yeah.
you know, it was a pretty solid weekend for Checo, I thought, in Zandvoort, and we'll see if he can build on that.
Carry some confidence, a bit more confidence into this weekend as well, you would hope. Currently on that timesheet, 9th quickest on those soft tyres, Sergio Perez. This is on board with Lewis.
A bit of a lock up there.
What's that new gravel track at 4?
Yeah, just snatch the inside front. I mean, these tyres will go in the bin anyway at the end of the session, so we've only got a couple of minutes to go, so it's worth pushing the limits and doing a bit of taking a bit more of a risk under braking there, as we saw a little puff of snow from Stroll as well at the same place. So all will be vanquished, it says, on the 2nd of September.
Yeah, 2nd
what does
of
that mean?
September this year, or the 9th of February if you are American, but I'm guessing that's the 2nd of September. Because they switch the month and the date
well, I was
around.
thinking Canadian as well.
I know,
because they do the same. So, you know...
we've either got something to look forward to on the 2nd of September, or we completely missed something in February.
Yeah, exactly. I suspect it's a new Aston Martin road car or something, isn't it?
It does sound like it. It does sound like it. Sauber Academy driver Carrie Schreiner. We get F1 Academy back in Singapore, of course. They were out in the Netherlands as well, racing. So good battles going on there as well in the F1 Academy.
That'll be fun for them, Singapore, to get to the street track and under the lights. That'll be a really fun weekend for them.
So Fernando Alonso currently P10. Out on some soft tyres, throwing that Aston through. Circuit-specific changes to the Aston this weekend. Not actually like a big upgrade package for them. Just trying to get that low downforce package that everyone wants around here.
Well, the rumour mill is that Adrian Newey's headed there, isn't it? And I'll be fascinated to see, you know, what effect and in what position he goes in at. Obviously, they've got Dan Fallows there from Red Bull, who worked with Newey for a long time at Red Bull. And you'd have to say, right, you know, the start of last year, this man, Fernando Alonso, and the team, was an amazing feel-good story. They were racking up those podiums. It was all happening. But really, it's fallen away, hasn't it? From the middle of last season until now, they haven't looked like consistent podium challengers. I know Fernando finished in Zandvoort and Brazil. He got podiums last year. But they never had the out-and-out pace that they started the season with.
And even this year, he scored in the first 6 Grand Prix, but he's only scored 17 points in the 9 Grand Prix since then. Yeah. So it's been tricky. It's been a long, hard road. The yellow flag in sector 3 right now. Looks like Colapinto, I think. on the last corner, coming out of 11, coming out of the final corner. He's got going again. There he is.
Oh.
So maybe a moment there for him. Wait and see if we get a replay of
There's dust on the tyres.
Yes, there is. As the checkered flag falls here. Well, we wait for a replay of that, Corinne. I've got something for you to have a look at on the SkyPad later, because Kevin Magnussen's got to go and see the stewards with Carlos Sainz and be investigated for impeding during that session. We've seen that before in practice. Different to qualifying. Don't tend to be quite so strict in practice, do they, in terms of impeding? But maybe you can have a look at that on the SkyPad a little bit later between Kevin Magnussen and Carlos Sainz. It's going on at 3 o'clock local time.
Yeah, they tend to let them off the hook, don't they?
They do,
in
yeah, practice.
So it's not, it shouldn't be a great penalty or anything like that, hopefully.
Yes, perhaps a little trip into the gravel for Colapinto if you have a look at the tyres as well. Maybe this is a little look at that. See what happened here, Karun.
Yeah, similar to what we saw from Antonelli and Sainz and that mid-corner snap of oversteer. And he was lucky that he slowed it down before it fully came around on him, and he jumped on the brakes and was able to get stopped before the barrier. So the gravel does, you know, it just makes a mess of the car. We call it gravel dash. Ooh, look, he spun. The back of the car went over the sausage curve.
Yeah, almost a full pirouette for Esteban Ocon.
Look at him bouncing, and you feel that in his spine.
Yeah.
So that's a great illustration on vehicle dynamics of a Formula 1 car, how they don't bounce very well.
So we come to the end of the session then. As you can see, Max Verstappen has gone quickest with a 1:21.676 with that new floor back on that Sergio Perez ran in Zandvoort. He said he was putting it on for this weekend.
It's a really interesting rear wing design on that Red Bull, actually. Just looking at that forward shot.
The seat is getting very hot. Okay, copy. We'll investigate.
I imagine everyone in the grandstand saying the same thing as well. We haven't got a roof over their heads.
I would imagine so. Don't sit on the one that hasn't been sat in for a while, because that's going to be very hot. Lewis Hamilton on his team radio there. But yeah, as we say, I mean, Red Bull wanted to bounce back. They wanted to find some time. That's a good sign so far this morning, because I don't believe he's led a session for quite a while. I'm trying to think. He didn't lead any session or qualifying segment in the last 4. So Zandvoort was only the 3rd time in the last 4 races he's led any sessions.
Yep, and they're heading on the grid to do their practice start. And they kind of, even psychologically, I'm sure, want to bounce back this weekend, don't they? This is, you know, the momentum has slipped towards or swung towards McLaren. And certainly both Max and Red Bull would want to stop that slide.
Well, if you remember last year, he started 7th. He was leading the race by lap 12.
That's
that
a different year,
dominance was
isn't it?
completely. I mean, it's so. We have to try and remember that now. That dominance.
Yeah, I mean, think of Spa. You know, we all thought, how quickly is he going to come through the pack? How quickly is he going to come through the pack? And he didn't. He sort of stayed 5th on the road. And I know George got excluded later, but yeah, he never came charging through the pack as we expected.
Valtteri not doing practice starts on the grid. The rest are lining up.
Bit of a shame for Colapinto, actually, to have had that spin then, because he, of all the people, would have benefited from... Yeah, he would have benefited from a practice start.
Let's watch Max as he goes through the process.
Ooh, anti-stall.
I'm glad we stopped to listen to that one.
Yeah. So you just completely, the red's drop and goes, and then there's the electronics take over and goes into what's known as anti-stall to make sure the car doesn't, you know, the engine switch off and die. So he then would have to pull the clutch in, reset it, and away you go. So
dare we talk about starts? In McLaren, maybe? I mean, that was both cars last weekend having that wheel spin.
Yeah, and actually here it's even more critical, because the run from the start down to the first chicane is much longer.
476 metres.
Longer?
No, it is 476 metres.
Yeah, but it is much longer than Zandvoort is the point. So that's hugely important, because you get the slipstream as well.
Sure, stuff they've been working on since then as well. Russell to get back in a little later on this afternoon.